We're here with the Naples Daily News Editorial Board and Terry Hutchison, who's running for Naples City Council seat. Thank you for joining us, Terry.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Let's go ahead and start out with a little bit of biographical information, if we could. You want to tell us and the folks that are going to watch this how long you've been in Naples and where you came from?
Originally, I was born in Lafayette, Indiana, and somehow made my way to California from there. Had a single mother, never knew my father, and my mother was struggling. I do recall having a couple of baby brothers and a baby sister, and my mom had to work the streets to make a living, and she ended up adopting me out to a preacher and his family in San Bernardino, California. So I was fortunate in that regard. Made our way to Oklahoma and was raised in Oklahoma. So raised in Seminole, Oklahoma, by and large. Went to work in the oil field in Oklahoma, and on one of the declines in the oil industry, went to work for a convenience store chain named Quick Trip, QT, and probably one of the finest run organizations in the United States. So I started out there on a graveyard shift, just picking up cigarette butts and cleaning toilets, and worked my way up in the organization. So spent quite a few years in Tulsa, then to Florida.
And what did you come right here to Naples, and when was that?
No, it was a circuitous route from Tulsa to Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville up to Colorado, back to the Fort Myers area.
Okay.
And I've been here, to answer your first question, I've been working the Naples area for, I think it was like since 2008. This was part of my area of responsibility for 7-Eleven Corporation. And I was a market manager, had responsibility for well over 100 stores from the Bradenton area down to Marco Island. Several $100 million in assets and revenues, total operations responsibility, financial responsibility. And about 2012, I decided to leave the corporate umbrella and become a franchisee, an independent store operator. And the company knew me well, and I currently have 5 stores, and 2 of those are here in Naples, one down on 3rd Street South, and the other one at Central and 41, Exxon Mobil, 7-Eleven branded store. And have been living in town, bought a house here a few years ago, and so I've had the businesses for close to 4 years here.
And so what is it that made you decide you wanted to jump into the city council race?
I believe in giving back to the community. I've been very fortunate. You know where I came from and the type of roots that I have. So I've been blessed. And I think that we all have some degree of responsibility to give back to our community in the way that we can. I believe that I have the skills, the demeanor, the desire, and the vision to help Naples for the next 4 years, and hopefully beyond that. But that's the driving reason, is to give back to the community. And I also see opportunity here. So opportunity in bringing something that the city needs, especially in leadership positions.
You mentioned you have a vision to help the city in the next 4 years. What does that vision include?
Well, I think from the city council candidates and probably from the mayoral candidates as well, there's some common threads going through everyone's platform positions. One of mine is making sure that we retain the ambiance and the kind of things that make Naples such a desirable place to live. I think that, as we all know, one of the things that we see, you folks have lived here, I've had a chance to discuss your backgrounds and how long you've been in the area prior to this camera turning on. And we all know that every season it's like a pig going through a python, this traffic that just increases by good Lord knows how much. And it's not something new, it's something that's been going on for years and years and years. However, as we go out of our daily lives and we get in our vehicles and drive, we're all seeing some of the same issues with heavy traffic, things that perhaps can be managed better. And I think that some of our past leadership hasn't effectively managed how this traffic works here in this city. And again, it goes back to how long has this been going on? How many opportunities have we had to address it? That's one issue. Number two, the vision of maintaining the ambiance. We see in the news, and certainly what's reported by your organization, as growth in the town. And along with that growth, people love to see growth. I'm a business guy. To be quite honest with you, if I was really selfish, I would want to see all the growth that we could possibly stand, right? Because it brings more business to my convenience stores. But on the balance side of that, we've got to be careful of how much we let the reins off of growth, because it'll end up really damaging what we have here. And an example of that is some of the compromise that we've made possible for developers, builders, and others. So my position has been that we better be careful what we compromise on building codes, variances, because we'll compromise ourselves right out of the type of Naples that we enjoy today.
Can you give an example or two of something this current city council did that does not fit the vision you have?
I'm a conservative guy by nature. I don't know if nature has anything to do with it, to be honest with you, but I'm a conservative guy. I worked on Ronald Reagan's campaign when he was first running for office. I'm coming from the business world. I know how budgets work. I know how to set budgets and revisit them and make sure you're on track. One of the things that there's a balance. And when you take a look at Baker Park, you know, who can be against a park, especially a beautiful park that provides us with a lot of green space and area that we all can enjoy. But to pull the trigger and start spending money on a park without being sure that the infrastructure's in place that'll support a park. In other words, I'm talking about specifically whether or not the ground and the soil and everything has properly been vetted, that there is no doubt that this is the way to go, then we've got to be careful where we spend our money. We can't be fast and loose with taxpayers' money. Well, that's my opinion. Again, I'm a supporter of the park, but only after we have been convinced that it's the right thing to do.
You mentioned traffic. Do you have either places in town where traffic could be managed better, particular intersections and how they might be configured better, or how would you go about attacking that traffic problem?
Yeah. So speaking about traffic is just one area where you better have your facts together before you start laying out a plan, right? So I don't have all my facts together, but I would tell you this, that if I became part of that city council, I would get the facts in terms of from the experts on and our streets people on how best to manage that traffic, especially during season. This isn't an issue during the off-season. It's during season. And my hypothesis is that even during special events, we're well-traveled. Many of those watching this right now are very well-traveled. Been to special events in different cities all around the United States and probably around the world. And it's not uncommon when you have high traffic situations, special events, and I'd like to say that maybe our seasonal influx of people could be considered a special event, that we look at doing some things a bit differently. And maybe that involves strategically placing officers on corners to actually coordinate traffic in a manner that really keeps it flowing and stops people from, especially during season, of blocking those intersections. You know, they get halfway through and they block an intersection, and it just compounds the problem. So that's an example. Not only that, but then you have to really look at just how well synchronized our lights are. That's another facet of it, and there's others, but those are a couple of examples.
Did you weigh in at all, or have any thoughts about the Central Avenue remake that's underway?
Yeah, so you're bringing up Central Avenue. I have not made Central Avenue any part of my platform. However, I have a heavy vested interest in how the Central Avenue plan goes down. And why is that? It's because I have a store there. My family has invested a significant amount of money in a physical asset, a retail business, right there at Central and 41. Now, when the city started discussing a plan to make changes to Central Avenue, that's when I started to become involved, started watching the process. I would tell you that all of the business owners on Central Avenue are in favor of street beautification. Currently, that's an ugly street, folks. And it really could stand to be beautified. But what is not okay is to make changes to that street that adversely affect the livelihood of people who've made investments understanding how that street was structured. Now, how's it going to affect me? And how's it going to affect the people living in town? A full-length median is going to go down Central from 41 going back towards the beach, as well as on the other side of 41 back to where the old Naples Daily News offices were. Now that median, I have a significant number of people, I would say 20 to 30% of my customers come from the west, coming into my store trying to make a left-hand turn for service. And I'm talking about people who are working hard day to day, landscapers, construction guys, as well as the people who live back there. So they're not able to make that left turn when that median goes in. My request, my ask, was that beautify the street, number one, but seriously reconsider taking that from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes. Seriously reconsider not providing a left turn into that business there, the 7-Eleven, and really think about, especially that street and the activity that that street enjoys, really rethink roundabouts close to that school.
One of the other recent decisions, besides for Baker Park and Central Avenue, the city made is to redo the city dock. Do you have any thoughts about whether that's a proper way forward?
The city dock is one of several, if you want to call it assets, that the city maintains that is designed to be a self-funding asset. And what does that mean? I say self-funding, those are my words. Those are not the city of Naples' words. Self-funding, I think there's probably a word enterprise in there that the city uses, meaning that this is a facility that should be drawing revenue. and that revenue being used to, just like any other business, to maintain it and do the kind of things that needs to be done. If the revenue hasn't been sufficient over the years to set back and allocate money from those revenues to maintain and improve the dock as necessary, then those in the positions of authority should have had the foresight to budget a small amount of money every year, knowing that this was coming up. Now we find ourselves in a position to where we're going to outlay a tremendous amount of money to bring it up to speed. So I believe that there are opportunities for improvement on how it was done. I don't dispute the fact that it needed to be done. But what gets measured does get done, right? So I believe that there's other projects around town. Right now we have the luxury, folks, of enjoying some good times in the city. Growth, a lot of tax money coming in, but that is not always going to be the case. And we had better be careful following a herd mentality on our spending.
Terry, you talked about Central Avenue. Let's talk a little bit about Fifth Avenue and where the city's going with that. Does that fit into the vision that you described here earlier?
Well, Fifth Avenue is just spectacular. In my opinion, I'm just a small country boy from Oklahoma, and once I saw Fifth Avenue, I was really struck with the jewel that we have there. And I think we probably all feel the same way. You go out there in the evening, you see people walking and dining and music, the lights, the trees, the signage, the way the whole thing works, I think has been very well done. So it's not something we need to play around with. And I just go back to my statements about compromise. So let's be careful. Let's invigorate and make sure we can sustain what's happened on Fifth Avenue. But let's be careful about how much we take the reins off of it and let growth get out of hand.
The original plan down there would call for probably at least one more parking garage than is there now, just to kind of keep it up. Do you
Right.
see, does that fit with your ideas of what's good for Fifth Avenue South? Additional parking garage?
The parking is a problem down there. I see the parking moving back into the neighborhoods. I believe that we really need to address the parking situation. If we can find, I'm not saying that a parking garage has to be down in that Fifth Avenue area. We have ways of finding property away from that area, put a parking garage, and provide transportation for those people over there. But yes, we need to, parking would be a great, additional parking would be a nice way to complement what we already have there, in my opinion.
You mentioned you didn't make Central Avenue part of your campaign because of your direct interest there. Do you have any insights or thoughts on 3rd Street South you could share with us, since you're down there and you've got a business down there? How's that district doing, and what might the city do to make it better, if there's any problem at all? I don't know that there is.
I'm not aware of any problem down on 3rd Street South. Another area that the city has done a very good job in providing some amenities. It's very well received by the community there, I believe. Certainly by the guests that frequent the restaurants and the shops there. I mean, it's certainly not as long in area as Fifth Avenue, but 3rd Street has its own special place and its own special fit. And again, I think they've done a wonderful job there. I would hate to see that overexploited as well.
Is pollution coming down to Naples Bay from the Golden Gate Estates area? There's outfalls that the city has taken its drainage out into the Gulf. What does the city need to do to address its pollution?
Well, first of all, who came up with that idea of putting outfalls that basically drop polluted water, I don't know, 30, 40 yards off the beach? If I did that, I'd be put in jail. Do you know? Do you know who did that?
I think it predates even my time here.
Okay, well, it needs to stop. And the solution for extending it 1,000 yards out is ridiculous. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. And hopefully we don't. So, it's a problem. And just like every other problem, we've got to get it addressed. And we have to look at just some of the simple things that we can do to fix it. I believe one of our other candidates had a brilliant idea. I think that we have to look at what we currently have, the roadside, the swells filled with silt and sand. First, we need to make sure those are correct. Those are holding areas for water. We also need to look at that ASR, the wells that we've drilled. Let's see if those are even effective. If they are effective, then let's consider it. If we need to consider it, then we better start putting aside money to tackle that, because that's not an inexpensive proposition. I come from the oil field, and I've actually had to drill wells in my past, so I know a little bit about drilling and recovery and those kind of things. I also think that we need to take a look again at the assets that the city has on the books in terms of property. Is that property being used effectively in terms of reservoirs or settling areas for this water? So I think that we really need to be creative, take a look at it, and get it solved. It's not okay to put this polluted water out there where our guests are swimming. And not, by the way, are we advising them that they're swimming in this water before they get out there? I'm shocked and amazed that we're doing that. And now the Golden Gate Canals, these are man-made structures, and I believe that these structures are putting a minimum of 150 million gallons a day into Naples Bay, and at peak, probably closer to 1 billion in one day with the rainfall. Now, January, I think we had 14 inches of rainfall versus a quarter inch or less the year before. So we've done our fair share of polluting that bay. I visited with the Natural Resources Department of the city of Naples, and I'll tell you this, that there's going to come a point in time when we look back at what we've done to protect our natural resources. And I think our Department of Natural Resources has fallen under the streets and our stormwater department. I believe that their annual budget is $50,000 or $60,000. I also believe that we don't send those people to talk to their peers from cities around the country, so how are we going to get some best practices and learnings if we're not educating our human resources? And then again, if I look at the city of Naples, I really believe that we probably need to rethink the size of that department, the scope of their responsibilities, and make sure that we're giving them the kind of resources they need to protect our environment. Part of, again, what makes Naples and the ambiance that we enjoy. Now, we talk about the pollution. The majority of that pollution coming from areas outside of the city borders. So that's not okay either. That is not okay. And that means that, when I say that, that means that people need to be held accountable. If that's the county, then we need to engage in discussions with the county. And we need to thoroughly vet all the options in correcting the situation. I would tell you that over 60% of the mangroves, the oyster beds, and the seagrass are destroyed because of this pollution entering Naples Bay. So I don't think anybody's okay with that.
We've got about a minute left here. Terry, is there anything you want to cover that we haven't crossed here?
Yeah. I would tell you that of all the candidates that are running, there's some fine people running. This is a nonpartisan race, okay? And it's at large, so whoever you vote to city council represents all the people. I'm often behind the counters of my stores serving guests. I have no problem, folks, still cleaning toilets, mopping floors, doing what it takes to serve people. I serve the widest demographic of people every day, from the billionaires and millionaires to the plumbers, electricians, and the landscapers. So I'm very accessible. And so when people have a chance to vote on March 15th, they're going to be able to cast 3 votes inside that booth for the 3 empty seats on city council. And I ask people to really just pick out 2 of your favorite candidates that you have and vote for them. But make sure you give me your 3rd vote. And here's why. When you vote for me, you're touching a lot more people. Your vote's going to count for a lot more than it will for the person that just happens to be closest to your homeowners association. So I think I can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Great.
Yep.